It started as mainly service delivery program, providing testing and treatment. In time, it grew and had advocacy components to it. The main focus of the advocacy was to champion for the right to access quality healthcare services by key populations. But we do recognize that these are individuals who have right to access for health. If you look at the data in Kenya, about 15% of the new infections were happening in men who have sex with men, and another 15% of the new infections are happening amongst female sex workers. And therefore, these two groups together were contributing about 30% of overall new infections in Kenya. And the only way then that the country would make significant progress towards reducing the number of new infections would be to establish programs that specifically target these populations, reaching them and reducing their risk of transmitting or acquiring HIV, which would then reduce the overall incidence of HIV. This then led to LVCT focusing its programs to target these key populations. We started in Nairobi. The approach that was used was a peer-led program. A lot of the people who have led the program in the past come from key populations. So they are able to reach some members of these key populations through their own networks. And once we get in a number of them, and we are able to show them that we are providing them with non-discriminatory services, which are of high quality, affirming of their right to access health, quality health, then we are able to convince them to go out and, through their networks, bring in more people, sort of a snowballing approach, so that once we start with a peer who gets us people, and these are able to reach others within their own networks. So soon then, word will be going around within the networks that if you go at LVCT, you're going to get non-discriminatory services which are of high quality. The other day in Kisumu, we had an MSM who came in from Uganda. He went to the internet, he Googled, where can I find non-discriminatory MSM services in Kisumu? And LVCT popped up and he just walked in. Said, I found this on the internet. Is it true that you provide non-discriminatory services for MSM? And we were able to serve him. And before the end of the day, he came back with 3 other clients saying, these are also my friends. I think they need services from you. And that sort of illustrates how that strategy works. After we established the program in Nairobi, we used the same mode of entry in Kisumu, reaching through the peers to the networks and a snowballing approach. And then later on started organizing moonlight services, moonlight outreaches. I think the name Moonlight sort of gives away the fact that this is an activity that's conducted at night and targeted at specific hotspots. We are able to identify them through the beneficiaries whom we already have.
LVCT Health, as you know, started off as a research project, doing research into voluntary testing and counseling in Kenya and the feasibility of setting up VCT centers. Now, it started the first 3 VCT centers in this country in the context of a research project. And that generated a lot of evidence for what then became quality standards for VCT and so on. In the process of delivering VCT, however, the service providers started to report that they are getting MSM coming to the services, persons with disabilities, and they don't know what to do with them. At that time, largely it was deaf people, and there was communication breakdown for deaf people. And for MSM, the service providers just didn't know how to approach it. For many of them, it was the first time they were actually meeting someone who's saying, I am a man who has sex with a man. And so the initial evidence was actually from the service delivery. And with this feedback from service providers, then LVCT started to think about the services that we are offering may not be meeting the needs of all the clients that are coming to us. And we therefore need to think about different services. And fast forward, there was a young man who was working here at LVCT, who was an openly gay man, and he had contact with the community, and they started to then come to LVCT, and in that process, LVCT then started to orientate its providers to delivering services for MSM, with a lot of input from the community itself through the man who was running the MSM program at LVCT.
And our flagship really has been testing. So one of our key things that we do is we do HTC, that is HIV testing and counseling. We provide care and treatment for those that turn HIV positive. We provide treatment for them. We include other sexual reproductive health services. For the clients that we meet, we provide, a broad range of services, which include whether it is family planning, whether it is screening them for TB. If they have TB, then we'll get them treated and we'll follow them up. We will ensure that if somebody is taking alcohol and probably alcohol is putting them at risk, we also link them to the facilities where they can be helped. We implement youth program, and within our youth program, we host a one-to-one hotline. The one-to-one hotline is a toll-free line for young people. This toll-free line, I would dare say that it started as an MSM hotline. From our data, there was a question that will be asked in the data correction sheet, whether you had the sex was with the same gender or with an opposite gender. And so we realized that people who had homosexual engagements were more often turning HIV positive than the others. So this was the counselor's observations from the rooms, and that was, brought to the management attention. And then we realized there was a need in this country to program specifically for men who have sex with men. And that's how the MSM program started. And when the program started in 2004, a hotline was established for them to call, because it was very hard to reach men who had sex with men. If today we are talking about stigma, about MSM, you can imagine what happened then in 2004.
The challenge that we faced on the ground is that the sex workers could not come to our services. MSM don't want to come to our meetings until we give them like a sitting allowance of 1,000 shillings, because there are organizations that were giving them 500, 1,000 for a sitting allowance. LVCT, we don't give that. And if we do, it is a refreshment. We take a cup of tea together, we drink a soda together, or we eat food, but no handouts. So that one have been a big challenge to us, even to get our target. But through our innovation, our creativity, we have been able to win them. And the king of condom, I'm using the network now. Going to workplaces, going to networks, going to chamas, and then getting enough time with the people and engaging and connecting with the people so as they can create demand. They can own up the whole process, and they can. And my first contact with the MSM, I did it in Malindi, and it was not easy. It was not easy because I feared that these people might recruit me. I was like, oh gosh. And I remember the first guy, when I was talking to them about VCT, he started making moves. Like, hi, how are you? Making eyes. And I was like, hi, who am I talking to? But through courage and standing on my agenda, it is about testing, it's about protection, I now started developing some skills to deal with them. and it was easy. After now I'm very close to them. I work very close to them. They call me anytime. I deal with all the issues. The largest group I've ever been with was almost 300 MSM that had a meeting and was the master of ceremony in a very colorful event, and they're also very comfortable with me.
Funny enough, the idea was conceived from either people we knew, people we interacted with, and basically it was a sexual network. You know this one person, this other one, and we sort of thought of starting an MSM clinic, which we did. And then thereafter, there was also the need that a lot of them were not coming to it was called the Tuesday Clinic. It was one of those things we volunteered to do for people after work hours. And then we realized some people also didn't want to show up in the compound, and therefore the idea of setting up a hotline came about, and that's how the hotline was set. And as we tried to market the hotline and marketed it through various youth-connected avenues and also within MSM groups and sex workers group, we realized that not only was the hotline being used by sexual minorities, but a lot of young people started using the hotline. And therefore we thought we might as well just make it a general hotline that is not very specific, targeting sexual minorities, but other young people could use. And that was the same thing with the MSM clinic. We realized as much as it offered privacy for some MSM persons to come for clinic, they also also felt like excluded from the normal networks, and therefore they wanted to just to be integrated within the normal clinic at LVCT. And that's how the MSM clinic sort of just was part of the HIV clinic at LVCT, and the hotline just became a youth hotline.
We also did a study in prison, because in prisons also we do know from existing evidence that there are men who have sex with men there. So we did studies in male prisons as well, just to establish what are the attitudes, what's the practice, and therefore what can we do in response to ensure that even those men who have sex with men in prisons are receiving services.
The study was co-investigated together with the people from the prison, and they knew the truth about what was happening. However, the policies are very hard to change, and especially when it is prison policies. Because even when you fight the MSM and this is going on in the prison, you cannot take condoms in the prison, and not look like you're encouraging it to happen. So I think it's a place where it's actually very difficult. But the most important was the people who are HIV positive are given treatment. We've been able to work with one of the organizations that works with the MSM, which is called HOIMAS. And HOIMAS also has a big catchment area, or a big catchment of MSM. And when they had a Pride Day, they call it Gay Pride Day. They invite us. We go, we talk about services that we provide. We talk about their health, what they need to do. We have our King of Condom, talk about condom, and it's been learning. You can't program without learning, and especially for MSM. For the longest time, I only got to know recently that it's useless to give an MSM condom if you don't give lubrication. We've given lubrication for a long time, but I didn't know that they have to go together, because then it's dry sex. So normally they have a lot of condom bursts. They have PEP issues, or other post-rape care issues. They have been raped by somebody.